According to sources, Donovan Mitchell may finally be on his way out of Utah. The Jazz prefer not to trade their star shooting guard and would much rather move their defensive cornerstone Rudy Gobert. Now, this is not news if you've been following the Jazz even the slightest bit. Some may even argue that this move is long overdue and that Mitchell should have left Salt Lake City years ago. There's no denying that Mitchell and Rudy Gobert haven't been successful, at least not in the postseason when it matters most. This is especially depressing when you think about how dominant the Jazz have been in the regular season in previous years, especially the number 1 seed they had just a few years ago. And the Jazz have reached this regular season success due to Mitchell's great offense and stellar defense from Gobert. As a result, many people find themselves wondering why the star duo can't seem to get it going when the playoffs are underway. While this year they finished lower than the first seed they had in 2020-2021, the team was still able to finish 5th in the Western Conference in 2022. This is why it was impossible to predict how poorly the Jazz would play in the playoffs. They just absolutely collapsed. What's even more embarrassing about their loss to the Mavericks in the first round is that Luka Doncic didn't even play in the first 3 games. And keep in mind, this was a Mavs team that was also missing important complimentary scorer Tim Hardaway Jr. for the season. It was basically Jalen Brunson versus the Jazz the first 3 games. And in this series, Jalen Brunson absolutely exposed Rudy Gobert's inability to switch onto smaller guards on the perimeter, hitting him time and time again with hezzies, crossovers, and various moves to get into the lane with ease, and basically completely eliminate Rudy's vaunted shot blocking ability. Due to the various injuries to the Mavs, many analysts predicted that the Jazz would beat the Mavericks before the series started, but the Mavs actually played pretty well without Luka with Jalen Brunson at the helm, and then when Luka came back, it was over. Aside from their absolute flop in the playoffs, it's been well established that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert do not get along. The pair has bumped heads on and off the court, and the tension has only worsened over the years. Even though there was a glimmer of hope back in 2021 that the two could mend their relationship, it seems now that these possibilities have run out and there's no turning back for them. And this most recent postseason embarrassment, in which Gobert was so thoroughly exposed, can't have helped Mitchell and Gobert's relationship. And with the recent departure of head coach Quin Snyder, it's safe to assume that Donovan Mitchell might be next on his way out. Quin Snyder played a huge role in Mitchell signing the 5-year, $163 million max extension deal that he got back at the end of 2020. But now that he's signed long-term, Donovan seems to be having second thoughts. Mitchell has expressed his frustration several times in the media, recently stating that he just wants to win and that he really doesn't care about the money in his lucrative deal.
I just want to win, yo.
Mitchell wants to win now, and if the Jazz's recent performances in the playoffs are any indication, they are nowhere near being close to a legit contender. This leaves forcing his way out with a trade to be Donovan's only option if he wants to leave the Jazz since he's signed long-term. But where will he end up? What teams have the salary matching and draft picks to actually trade for him? Certainly the Jazz will want a king's ransom in return for their budding young star. Will he follow in the footsteps of LeBron and head to South Beach to join Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo? Let's explore some potential realistic trade destinations for where Donovan Mitchell will end up this offseason. While the Jazz seem to have struck gold trading for both Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert from the Nuggets in 2 different drafts, things have not quite panned out as expected. The star duo has only won a single playoff series in the last 4 years together, despite being a top contender in the league each of these years. Why can't these all-star teammates get along? There may be multiple reasons for this, but the obvious one is the frustration from their postseason failures. Before we get to that, let's look at where all this tension started. Rudy's joke gone wrong. Back in March 2020, Rudy Gobert ended a press conference talk in an infamous way by touching all the microphones in front of him before running out of the room. This was during the height of the pandemic, and the response from the media to this was outrage. What made the situation even worse was that Gobert would be the first player in the NBA to contract the virus, with Mitchell testing positive a few days later. This reportedly did not sit well with Mitchell at all. He felt Gobert's actions were childish and irresponsible, and were a detriment to the team. And it's possible that Mitchell even blamed Rudy for the temporary lockdown of the NBA. And Gobert's antics did not sit well with Donovan Mitchell, who's truly passionate about the game and was deeply upset at not being able to play. Gobert's terrible offense. Another reason Donovan wants to leave Utah is his co-star's lackluster offense. While some claim that Rudy Gobert turns into a shell of himself defensively in the playoffs, the stats prove otherwise. The 3-time Defensive Player of the Year has developed a reputation for being one of the best rim protectors in the league. But despite his rim protecting abilities, he has been consistently abused by smaller guards like Terrence Mann and Jalen Brunson. In addition, opponents have been able to stretch Gobert from outside of the paint by using three-point specialists and shooting big men. This has allowed teams to get open looks to the basket as Gobert is mostly effective guarding the rim. It's important to note, however, that most of these open shots result from Rudy trying to cover up for his teammates' defensive mistakes. The result of this excessive reliance on Rudy on defense is what we saw in Game 2 against Dallas when Maxi Kleber, a role player, hit 8 3-pointers. However, despite his clear flaws, without Rudy Gobert, the Jazz would consistently rank among the worst defensive teams in the league. And since Donovan Mitchell and the rest of the team can't defend to save their lives, it ends up being Gobert versus 5 on defense, which is not a recipe for success in the playoffs, especially when you consider that teams have time to adjust and game plan. Time and time again in the Mavericks series, you could see the Mavericks team isolating him in pick and rolls to make sure that he would get on a switch against a smaller guard. Once Gobert was on the ball guarding someone smaller and quicker than him, it was easy work to get an open look. So even his calling card, rim protection, was actually a complete liability in the playoffs. Offensively, Rudy Gobert is borderline horrendous. In terms of offensive capabilities, Gobert has one of the weaker offensive bags in the NBA, and aside from a few different dunks, he doesn't really offer anything of value on that end. He doesn't have a jump shot, he isn't really a threat other than a lob in the pick and roll, and he doesn't really have a go-to post move or post footwork that he can use to take advantage of smaller defenders. He also has terrible handles and overall basketball IQ, and can't seem to keep the ball secure after grabbing a rebound, consistently getting stripped by smaller players. In an era when big men are shooting threes, it quickly becomes evident why the Jazz haven't been able to push deep into the playoffs. His lack of switchability and slow-footedness on defense, combined with his lack of offensive skill, make him an absolute liability on the court. Not only that, but Gobert is such a non-threat on offense that the defense can literally ignore him and key in on Donovan, which makes his life as a scorer even more difficult, having to shoot more contested looks and over more double teams. And because of Gobert's offensive woes, his teammates don't trust him, and they would rather turn the ball over or jack up a highly contested three than pass to him. And this has been true of Donovan Mitchell himself more than once. But even more than that, what seems to frustrate Mitchell and the Jazz fans most is that Gobert can't seem to take advantage of smaller lineups as he should. This means that even if a team plays small ball, Gobert still averages mediocre numbers, and Mitchell believes he can't win with that, and rightly so. It is worth noting, however, that there is also an underlying battle of egos at work in this. Gobert believes Mitchell doesn't appreciate what he does on the defensive end, a task Mitchell is truly utterly hopeless at. And Mitchell is a workaholic who's always in the gym and sees Gobert's lack of an offensive game as pure laziness. And to be fair, Mitchell is probably right. I mean, Gobert's been in the league since 2013, and how much has his offensive game improved? How can you not learn how to shoot a free throw, a 15-foot mid-range, a jump hook, shoot even a 7-foot bank shot after being in the league for 9 years? But despite whether or not Rudy Gobert is living up to his potential, my blame does go to both players, as well as the team and ownership, who's not been able to surround their star players with good perimeter defenders and shooters in order to boost their players' abilities. Donovan should recognize his shortcomings on defense, and also recognize the value that Gobert provides. But Gobert in turn needs to respect what Donovan does on offense, and increase his abilities to score, while Mitchell must increase his ability to defend. They both really need each other's abilities to succeed on the court. But unfortunately, a combination of their egos and their rocky at best relationship off the court have prevented them from realizing this. Possible trade destinations for Donovan Mitchell. Now, Donovan Mitchell clearly wants to leave the Jazz, but it's not going to be an easy feat considering he's still under contract with the Jazz through the 2024-2025 season with an additional player option in year 5. However, if he were to make a move and force his way out, these are his most likely destinations. The Miami Heat. Donovan Mitchell's love for the Miami Heat is undeniable, and he's been spotted going to their games numerous times and even cheering them on. In addition to that, he has been friends for a long time with Bam Adebayo, whom he's known since way back in high school and still maintains a great relationship with. The two friends have long had a dream of winning a championship together, which would make for a great story. Donovan Mitchell is also cool with Jimmy Butler and other players on the Heat, and as we saw in the postseason against the Boston Celtics, the Heat urgently need another scoring option who can help Butler carry the offensive load. All these factors make the Miami Heat the ideal destination for Mitchell, who can give them the extra push they need to finally clinch an NBA title after coming so close in recent years. A proposed trade package for Mitchell would have to include Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero moving over to the Jazz, as well as their 2022 first-round pick. The Heat may also have to give up their 2023 second-round pick to facilitate this trade, and may have to get another team involved in order to have the draft capital and assets required to land Mitchell. But in my opinion, it would be worth it. Tyler Hero would finally get the opportunity to start in Utah, as well as the huge contract he's been craving, and Miami would have an all-star shooting guard to compete for the championship again. I can see this trade happening, especially with the help of Dwayne Wade, who's been mentoring Donovan Mitchell and intends to buy stakes in the Miami franchise. The New York Knicks. Another potential trade destination for Donovan Mitchell would be the New York Knicks. Even after spending heavily last season in free agency, the Knicks did not make the play-in tournament to make the playoffs, and they will surely make some changes to their roster this season. Their fans are longing for playoff games back at the Garden, and Donovan Mitchell may be what they dearly need, a scoring machine who can light up the arena. The Knicks have a long history of going for star players as opposed to building talent from within, and it really hasn't worked out well for them. Recently, RJ Barrett has looked like a promising talent that may serve them well in the long run if he continues improving. This makes the Mitchell to the Knicks trade even more challenging, as the Knicks really do not have much to offer aside from RJ Barrett, who they should be looking to keep. With that being said, a trade package to the Knicks would look something like this. Emmanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin, Nerlens Noel, and Alec Burks to the Jazz, in addition to 3 first-round picks, 2023, 2025, and 2027. The combination of RJ Barrett, Donovan Mitchell, as well as Julius Randle could be exciting to watch, although the spacing could be horrendous, and would certainly be the change the Knicks need to make a playoff run. A deeper roster and some young players who can defend will also benefit Utah, but it may be the 3 first-round picks that really entice the owners to make the deal. The Cleveland Cavaliers. If a move to South Beach or New York fails to materialize, I still believe Donovan Mitchell has one last landing spot. The Cavs. While this is the most unlikely of the 3 destinations, Cleveland could end up being a great destination for Mitchell. The backcourt of Darius Garland and Mitchell, paired with their huge frontcourt of Evan Mobley, Lauri Markkanen, and Jarrett Allen, could propel the Cavs to greater heights. The Cavs were relatively successful this season, despite losing Colin Sexton to a season-ending injury and not making the playoffs after losing in the play-in tournament. Now imagine what they can do with Donovan Mitchell in the lineup. And as Sexton enters free agency, the Cavs may pair him up with Karis LeVert and some future draft picks to sweeten the deal for the Jazz. The only drawback to this trade is that Darius Garland's production may experience some form of stunted growth, deferring more to Mitchell after just recently receiving the keys to the offense. With free agency coming up, it'll be interesting to see how the Jazz handle this mess they're in. The last thing they want is to lose both their star players in the same offseason. But one thing is certain, Donovan Mitchell is done playing with Gobert and wants out. Do you think Donovan Mitchell will leave the Jazz? Do you think the Jazz will trade him or trade Gobert? If so, where will they go? Let us know in the comments.